to the Better Life Podcast. I'm April, and I'm here with my good friend Tina Konkin.
It's so good to be here again.
Yeah, we're actually in Florida, and we're recording this podcast. And, you know, Tina is a relationship expert. She deals with all kinds of things in life, and that's a whole other podcast. But, no, she deals with marriage intensives. Why don't you tell them a little bit about you?
We're counselors. My husband and I were counselors, and now I'm a widow of 8.5 years, but we started doing marriage intensives. April, we call ourselves marriage experts. But it's really because, as you know, when you go through things in your marriage and then God heals and God redeems, you can't keep it in.
Right.
And that's when we started looking at ministering to couples like us that felt like there was no hope or restoration. So now we do marriage intensives in Southern California. I'm from Canada. I'm Canadian, but we're in Southern California. And once a month we do 3-day intensive because we found that when people were facing trauma or infidelity or things that can happen in marriage that you lose hope, my hope coach here, you kind of lose that hope. We found that just 1 hour counseling a week
it's not enough.
Wasn't going deep enough.
Right.
The other thing we discovered that I think we're going to talk a little bit about today is just that we are always looking at what went wrong in the marriage.
Yeah.
And a big part of my ministry and our intensives is forget the marriage. The marriage was created by God. It's a good thing.
Right.
But look at ourselves and what we bring into the marriage. And I think that's what healed me.
Yeah. It's dealing with our own things. And specifically, like Tina said, we want to talk about traumas, maybe hidden traumas. And, we'll go a little bit deep, but not too deep. We always like to give ways we can deal and heal.
Yes.
And, so we want to talk about unhealed trauma, and I found this on the internet. I thought it was so good. You may not even realize that some things that have been spoken over you, things you had to go through when you were younger or as a young adult, wherever you might be in life, have affected and impacted your life.
That's right.
Maybe in the negative. And I wanted to read some things. You can tell me if you agree with these or not. So unhealed trauma can look like this: low self-worth, codependency in relationships.
So true.
Fear of being abandoned. Now, it's not saying all these are true. I just want to kind of show you some things. Fear of being abandoned, putting your needs aside for other people, craving external validation, an innate feeling of shame. That's interesting. Not being able to tolerate conflict, always fearing what might happen next, resisting positive change. These are just some things. And as Tina and I were talking about this, you told me a story about your husband who's in heaven now and what he was called as a child and how that affected and impacted him. We just want to start this off by saying we're just sharing some experiences, but we will always bring back the hope and how we can get through these hidden traumas.
Exactly. My husband, the best way to describe him is he's a little boy that grew up on Little House on the Prairie.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? So that gives you the idea. Happy family, little hobby farm, the cows, the chickens, everything. And a happy home for the most part. Great marriage, great parents, love God, parents, and their whole life was about ministry to children and older people. And so, I just want to give you that concept because very different from me. I grew up in a very dysfunctional home, unwanted. I did have the abandonment issues, but it was obvious for me. And I remember when we were healing and looking at ourselves, he really didn't know what could he possibly heal from childhood. And I know we're going to come back to the healing part. But one of the healing exercises that we did in our intensives was map out our story, and here's the importance of mapping out your story. Everything you saw, everything you heard, and everything you experienced as a child made up you. Right? So if you've got that shame stuff, or I agree with everything you just read. Not necessarily everybody has all of them, but you can identify, and I can definitely identify. With my husband, he really couldn't identify to most of that except the self-esteem. He had very low self-esteem. And so when we uncovered our story and started mapping out our story, he said, I could put down things like Dad was too busy to come to my basketball, or, take me fishing sometimes. And, I'd be fishing alone on a Saturday because Dad was working. And, that's what he goes, but I understood it. We had foster kids, we had a farm, So he really couldn't find anything. And then, I always encourage people, ask God to reveal to your heart if there's a hidden trauma, if there's a hidden hurt that is still affecting you today. Well, he continued with it, and he just said, Lord, is there anything else, And God brought him right back to the farm days. When he was just a little boy. He said, I couldn't have been more than 6 or 7, And he said, I was riding the tractor, and I stalled it. And my dad came over, he goes, not even in an angry voice. He just said, you little dumb bunny, you got to push the clutch, right? And he remembered that. And then all of a sudden he remembered bringing the wrong tool. And that was his dad's nickname for him, Dumb Bunny. Well, he didn't remember that nickname. It didn't carry on through life, It was just when he was that little boy and getting the wrong thing. And his dad was the best dad. So I just went, that hurt you? He goes, what? I didn't know why I would never go to college. He said, I stuttered, so I never showed up when there was, he goes, I would physically be sick if there was an exam or if we had to read out loud. He said, I never had dreams of going to college, so I got into sports, and that was sort of my validation.
Yeah. So he didn't think he was smart enough?
Wasn't smart enough for college. Now fast forward to our marriage, right? We nicknamed it after, I didn't call him Dumb Bunny. I said, am I touching that stupid button? We called it a stupid button. And because that's what he adopted from that experience that he didn't even remember. So that's why when we were talking about this show, about this podcast, I said to you, a lot of people have hidden trauma that affects them on a daily basis, in daily life, in your relationships especially. So in our marriage, all the responsibility that took brains fell on me. What do I mean by that? It's time for the children to do homework. You're the smart one, you went to college. If he was mad at me about something that he did that was dumb. We all do dumb things. He goes, well, you're the smart one. You're the college. So he'd use it in every scenario to defend himself. And I never understood it. If we had to go to the bank for a loan or for a mortgage, he goes, you do the talking. Right? And I never got it. But when I saw it on his storyboard and there was such emotion, imagine 30 years later, he discovers this hidden trauma and all this tearing up, all this just awful. It was awful to watch. And then can you imagine the compassion that came over me? Because I used to get mad at him. Oh, that's one way to throw the responsibility at me. I'm the smart one, all this. So once we discovered that hidden hurt, that I call trauma, really, because if it stops you from doing what you desire to do, if it stops you from, and he was always the grunt worker, even in the church, he always volunteered. He was a great worship leader, that he could do. But when the pastor asked him to preach, he was like, no, I don't do that. Not smart enough for that. He wouldn't use those words, but that's what was coming up.
So how did he get through it? So he didn't know it was there, but he had life responses, life reactions 30 years later. How did he
all
get
his
through
life, those life responses, since he was 7 or 8, right? He wouldn't show up for school when there was a test. He wouldn't, and barely graduated, but he graduated and never went off to college. So if people look at my website, they'll see the R3 all over the place. The R3 is really our method of how we healed our marriage and how we healed ourselves. And that was by looking at reveal, rewrite, renew. So the reveal is the hardest because that's where you find the hidden stuff. We all understand trauma when it comes to a rape victim, when it comes to child abuse, when it comes to you got hit by a drunk driver and maybe you're in physical trauma. All that is not hidden. Right? It's our story. We remember it. Even if we try to hide it and don't heal it, we need to heal all of it. I don't want to make light of big trauma,
Yeah,
because there's
right.
that big trauma, you know, but I don't want people to ignore those,
hidden trauma.
the hidden one, because it was affecting our marriage big time. It angered me. You know, a lot of our fights were based on that.
Yeah.
And so when we reveal, then God can change and heal.
Yeah.
But anything you don't reveal, anything you're not willing to look at,
Right.
big or small, and that can include sin, unfortunately,
Yeah,
you
right.
know, anything you're not willing to look at, you can't change.
Yeah.
And you definitely cannot heal. And that responsibility is on us.
Mm-hmm.
So how he healed, once he saw it, of course, compassion came over him too for that little boy that you
Yeah.
don't think about when you're an adult. And then he saw it. He goes, I wasn't dumb.
Yeah.
You know, I was 7. Of course, my foot didn't reach all the way on the clutch.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't know there was more than one kind of wrench.
Mm-hmm.
And his dad didn't mean it in an evil way.
Yeah. Right.
Either, you know. So that's how he was able to rewrite the story. Because you see, in order to heal what's happened and what we've experienced or what we saw or heard in our past, we have to go there with adult eyes.
Yeah.
We're no longer a child that's defenseless, and we're no longer a child that doesn't understand. So, you know, we do need to go back there
Right.
with the purpose of rewriting through adult understanding.
And rewriting means sometimes, or often, we got to forgive.
It does.
So it's
Right.
dealing so you can heal, and then it's not repeating the past if the past
Exactly.
isn't worth repeating. So the whole reason for this episode is to, like Tina said, you know, you got to discover. You may say, well, you know, I came from a great home. Hey, you may not have anything to discover. Yay for that. But, you know, maybe you're reacting a certain way. Maybe you're doing certain things. Maybe you're not feeling that you're capable, just like Ron, her husband, didn't feel capable, didn't feel smart enough. Why is that there? And realize this, God doesn't make mistakes.
No.
God doesn't, and he's not going to start with you. And, you know, just go to those places. You know, I don't want to get through life and realize there's stuff I could have made better. I want to constantly be better every single day. That's what this podcast is all about.
Yeah.
So we want to encourage you today to look deep down. And our hearts go out to you for the little traumas as well.
Yeah.
And before we end this episode, we're going to pray for you. But I just want to encourage you to take those 3 steps. Go over them again. Reveal.
Rewrite. So the reveal really is simple. Start with that, because the rewriting, you know, it's going to take a process of forgiveness. But the reveal, I always ask my clients to start with this. Ask God to prepare you, to show you whatever it is He wants to heal.
Yeah, that's good.
Right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes we don't want to hurt anymore.
Yeah.
And so we just bury those things. Or other times, they're just buried because you
Yeah.
don't think about childhood. You know, you don't think that maybe one word spoken, like I could tell you story after story of somebody, you know, who's been told, you'll never amount to anything if you don't learn this.
Yeah.
Right? But they didn't pick up, you learned this. They picked up, you'll never amount to
Yeah.
anything. And then they live out that lie.
Right.
You know, and that
That's
was the
so
same
good.
with Ron.
Don't
They
live out the lie.
Don't
That's
live out
good.
the lie. And ask God if they're in the secret departments of your heart. Give Him permission, because He's not going to. He is not going to open something up that He is not going to rewrite and help you rewrite through forgiveness. So, you know, I want to encourage you to think about. We talked about secrets. Secrets keep us sick. And so if you're keeping even those secrets from yourself, ask God
Yeah.
to
that's
reveal
good.
those. And especially in my marriage, you know, when I realized we both realized this wasn't about the marriage, you know, that there was trouble in our marriage. It was about revealing what was in our hearts that we came into the marriage
Right.
with. And that's where a lot of revealing happened. Now let me tell you, the last part of Ron's story, he went to college when I was pregnant with my second child,
Oh, wow.
continued to work, went to college full-time, Bible college, and graduated a pastor's degree with honors.
Wow.
My
that's
dumb
awesome.
bunny did all that.
That's awesome.
You know? Yes.
Well, you know, hurt people, but
Yes.
healed people heal people.
Exactly.
And, you know, we just want to encourage you today that you are not what you've gone through. You're not your
That's
struggle. You're not your trauma. You are not your abuse, you are stronger, you're built for pressure, you can make it through this and not just barely get by in life, but thrive in life. And Tina, will you pray for those people who are watching today?
I will. Lord, my heart today really senses that the prayer that I want to pray over whoever is listening, whoever's heart is broken, because you heal the brokenhearted. Lord, that they would say this simple prayer in their prayer closet just with you. God, show me my heart. And I think of David when he said, that his spirit needed to be renewed. And God, show me my heart and heal it. But don't, Lord, whoever's listening, do not let them be afraid. I keep getting this, but if I go there, because that's how I was, don't be afraid of it. God wants you to heal. The enemy wants you to stay stuck. So, Lord, show them.
Oh, that's good. And I hope this episode has helped you today. Thank you, Tina, for being with us. And until this time next week, I hope you have an amazing day.